Recently, I suddenly realized that I don't have that much experience with the Ys series. It's yet another game franchise that I constantly see and just never get around to playing. That said, I have played through Ys IX Monstrum Nox and I reviewed it a little while ago on this channel, so I'll leave a link to that down in the description below if anyone wants to watch it. Over the recent Christmas holidays, I decided that I was going to play Ys VIII at my own speed in my spare time just for fun. I wasn't actually planning to record anything or make a video on it, but when I looked the game up, I noticed that a new PS5 version had been released only a few months ago in November 2022. Some of you may know that I have a pretty good relationship with NIS America and they've provided me multiple review codes in the 2 years that I've been doing this. So I reached out to them to see if I could get a review copy. They quickly got back to me with a code and of course that means I now owe them a video, so here we are. To be fair though, it's not exactly a hardship, is it? I mean, I like to play games and I like to make gaming videos, so I'm happy to do it. This isn't going to be a full, in-depth review or anything like that because while the PS5 version is new, the game originally came out in 2016 on the PS Vita. It's relatively old at this point, but I have to say I'm so glad that I decided to play it because I absolutely love it. I think I might like it better than Ys IX actually. Don't get me wrong, I like them both a lot, but for some reason I found this one to be instantly captivating, like I couldn't put it down. It's not exactly a graphical powerhouse, but I think it looks nice, it runs well, it has a great story, and the combat is fast, fun, and fluid. I understand that the Ys games are pretty niche, but I literally can't say enough nice things about the ones that I've had the pleasure of playing. If you have any interest in action RPGs, I do really urge you to give this one a shot, especially if you have a PlayStation 5. So what is Ys VIII Lacrimosa of Dana and why do I recommend it? Well, it's a third-person action RPG presented in an anime style and it is, of course, part of the well-respected Ys series which started in Japan all the way back in 1989. You play as Adol, as you do in most Ys games, who's working aboard a ship called the Lombardia. The ship ends up getting attacked by a giant sea creature and ultimately sinks. When Adol awakens, he finds himself on a beach and quickly realizes that he's stranded on the island of Seiren. I know that's not exactly a lot to go on, story-wise, and there is a lot more for you to discover, but as usual, I really don't want to spoil the plot for anyone, so I'll leave it there for the time being. Now, as I said, I do have limited experience with the Ys games as I've only ever played 2 of them. In both of those games, you play as Adol, so I have a question for the people that might know more about this than me. Are all of the Ys games properly connected? Like, is there a long single story that runs from Ys I all the way to Ys IX, or are the stories self-contained? I mean, I read that Memories of Celceta is a spin-off game, but apparently it still contains important story stuff, so I really have no idea of the continuity here. Ys VIII and Ys IX don't seem to be connected outside of some very minor references, so am I right to assume that the games are connected, but they barely mention any past details so that new players can start anywhere in the series? Does that sound right? I don't know the situation, but regardless, any info you can provide would be greatly appreciated. Very soon after starting the game, you'll meet the first member of your party, Laxia von Roswell, and the first encounter with her is interesting, shall we say. She quickly joins your group and eventually you'll be setting up a home base which acts as a shelter for your growing family of castaways. As you build up and improve the shelter, you'll be able to take on various side quests which unlock new services from the other characters such as weaponsmithing or tailoring. The gameplay loop generally includes venturing out into the unknown world in order to progress the main narrative of the game, but you'll have plenty of time and flexibility to complete your side missions and grind if you want to. The game gives you a lot of time with the characters, and the scenario of being stranded on a cursed island and having to survive is so compelling to me. I love the idea of the characters all doing their part and you having to create a makeshift home in order to keep everyone safe. I can't really explain what it is exactly about this theme that speaks to me, but I was really into it and I was eager to follow the story. I've read somewhere that people aren't too happy with the localization of the game, but I played this in English with the English dub, and I personally didn't notice any problems whatsoever, but I suppose your mileage may vary. As you explore the world, you'll collect a ton of items and materials from combat and from gathering points. This all goes towards building up the shelter, brewing potions, creating items, or improving your weapons. Enemies will respawn if you leave an area and walk straight back in, so if you're really into the game, you can grind out anything that you need, and of course, you'll be gaining XP as you do so, which levels up your characters and makes them stronger. You can switch between any members of your active party instantly at any time with the single press of a button, and that's part of how the combat works. There's 3 types of damage in the game, which are slash, pierce, and strike. Each character in your party deals a certain type of damage, and most enemies are weak to those specific types. Hitting an enemy with the right damage type causes them to break, which makes them essentially defenseless for a short time. You've got your standard single button attack combos and special skills that you can unlock, equip, and then use in battle by holding down R1 and pressing the assigned face button. Also, each character has a super attack called an extra skill, which is quite powerful and looks pretty cool as well. In terms of defense, you've got the ability to perform a flash guard or a flash move. Flash guard is essentially a parry, and flash move is essentially a perfect dodge. Successful flash guards negate all damage and turn all of your attacks into crits for a short period. Perfectly executed flash moves activate a short slowdown of time where everything moves in slow motion except for the player. Ys VIII features a lot of different difficulty modes, which is great because you can experience it the way that you want to, and I'll be completely honest with you. I played this over Christmas and even on Christmas Day. I didn't want a challenge, I just wanted to have some fun and lose myself in the story, so I played the game on easy. In fact, I often play games that way because when I want a challenge, I'll play something more intricately difficult like Bloodborne or Elden Ring or something like that. Plus, I am getting older, so I guess my reactions aren't as good as they once were. That said, I suppose as long as you're having a good time, that's what matters most. In terms of the visuals and the graphics, I know they aren't high-end or realistic, but I still think they look great. You have to remember this was originally a PS Vita game that was ported to the PS4 and now has been improved for the PS5. I thought the character models and clothing designs were pretty unique and also quite distinct from each other. I can't speak for anyone else, of course, but I found so many of the characters to be memorable and instantly likable. I had a great time exploring all of the different environments, opening up the shortcuts, and it's hard to explain, but for whatever reason, I had this huge sense of, I don't know, kind of like atmosphere, I guess. Again, it's hard to put into words, but the best way I can think to put it is that the areas I visited within the game felt familiar in some strange way. Something that I noticed very early on was just how fun and incredibly satisfying the gameplay is. The combat is so snappy, accurate, refined, and flashy. It's just a pleasure to fight the enemies in this game, and I found it almost impossible to simply ignore them and run past them. I actively wanted to engage with the combat system over and over again, and it simply never got old. And honestly, I could go on and on about this game all day long, but as I said at the beginning, this isn't supposed to be a full review, so I'm not going to go into every little detail or labor the point. I just wanted to give you an idea of how it looks, what it's about, how it plays, and what my opinions are towards it. As I mentioned in the intro, this is the new PS5 version of the game. In person, on my 4K QLED TV, it looks crystal clear and runs at 4K 60 FPS by default. It can also run at 1080p 120 FPS if your TV or monitor supports it, which mine doesn't, but it is cool to have that option. If you don't happen to have a PS5, you can also grab the game on PS4, Nintendo Switch, and PC if you prefer. Apparently, it runs very well on PS4 and PC, but Nintendo Switch will likely have the lowest resolution and will probably be capped at 30 FPS. It's available on all the platforms I just mentioned right now, and I highly recommend it if you're in the market for a new RPG. Also, before we move on, it is worth noting that Ys IX Monstrum Nox is also getting a similar upgraded release sometime around spring 2023. In my opinion, Ys VIII Lacrimosa of Dana is an incredible action RPG, probably one of the best you could find on current hardware, at least as far as my tastes go. Pretty much every single aspect of the game is a pleasure to engage with, and for me, this is going to be one of those RPGs that I'll always remember and that I'll definitely play again. Now obviously, the graphics aren't photorealistic or highly detailed, but as I've said before, it's not always about that. Sometimes the artistic direction, the characters, the gameplay, and the story take center stage, and this is one of those times. Ultimately, I think this game is nothing short of brilliant. I mean, can I guarantee that you, the viewer, will like it as much as I did? No, of course not, but I do feel confident to recommend it to anyone who plays and enjoys action RPGs. I honestly can't believe it's taken me around 7 years to sit down and play this game, but now that I have, I deeply appreciate the experience. If you enjoyed this particular video, I hope you'll consider subscribing for more. Don't worry, subscribing is completely free, but it really helps to grow the channel. If you'd like to help support what I do, then please check out the first link in the video description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.